Welcome to another episode of Humanly Plausible with your hosts, Roly and Richard from the Pink Collective.
Welcome back to another episode of Humanly Plausible.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome back. Welcome back.
So we're rolling season 2. So, I think that, one of the biggest things I've been worried about or thinking about is I wanted to get your thoughts on should we dye our beards?
I am not dyeing my beard at all. I'm a 55-year-old man, and each one of these gray hairs represents lessons learned and wisdom gained. So I'm embracing it.
It's a true question. So my wife is she doesn't want me to.
She doesn't want you to.
Yeah, but it's for me, it's yours is nice and even.
Well,
did it just start? I mean, how
did
it?
Because I didn't have a beard until 2 years ago when I was already graying. So I came. You're a young man.
Yeah, mine's just kind of sprinkled in.
Yours is
me off. I don't like it.
You're just getting a little sprinkle. You're at the stage now where dyeing the beard is probably not a
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's long gone past that. I'd be living in denial if I did something like that, brother. I'm good with the gray
cool.
hair.
So
that's a very important subject you brought up, though. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we're still taking on new guests. So again, if you're listening and you're interested on being on the show, feel free to reach out to us at you can comment on our blog or just simply hashtag Humanly Plausible, and we'll reach out to you. So. All right, so let's see what we have in store today.
Yeah, man, we're just going to do it old school. We're going to come out the box right here. I can't remember the last time that we didn't have a guest, and we actually pulled
Just
out.
me and you.
All right. So
is there anything else you want to mention before we go into this box that you feel like you need to address?
I'm really interested in seeing what kind of organic conversation was going to come out this box.
Is it my turn? Really? I just forgot.
We lost. Just go right ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So, out of the box question.
All right, so this is define leadership. What makes a great leader?
Wow, that's a big question, man.
It is. So yeah, we can cover a lot of ground. So
that's a lot.
I'll let you kick this off and see where you want to take us.
Well, I think in terms of a leader, I think it's leader who is someone who inspires purpose of the team that's going to follow them. Okay. One that can promote investment in the mission and therefore have the dynamic be one more of executing a purpose-driven mission versus just doing tasks. I think that's really the difference between a leader and a boss. I think bosses are more task-oriented. You need to have this report to me by 3 o'clock p.m. That's what a boss says.
True.
I think a leader is cultivating environment where that person would be bringing it to you at 3 o'clock without needing to be told because they understand the why behind the deadline as well as why they're doing doing whatever they're doing anyway.
So, and I'll leave it open to anything. It just doesn't need to be a business. So, who do you consider to be in your? It could be a coach. When you think of good leadership, who do you think about?
I don't know why I just thought about that, but we talk about the Hard Knocks.
Oh, yeah.
I like Dan Campbell, man.
So Hard Knocks, what is Hard Knocks for the folks that don't know?
Hard Knocks is a wonderful series for all you football fans on HBO in which they take a all-access look into the preseason of a select team every year, and they actually have Hard Knocks in season now, which comes into the middle of the season. But this year, the Detroit Lions were the Hard Knocks team, and Dan Campbell, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, the interim coach, that probably should not have been let go, but we're very happy where we are now. So anyway, I just
that's another podcast.
That's another podcast. But Dan Campbell, there was something about the way he inspired. And one of the things that I think that helped him inspire people, it is funny because it's more than words. It was his enthusiasm. And even when you look at him, he's jacked, man. He's still in the gym.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
he looks like a player.
But think about that. Think about a player playing for a guy who looks the part of what you're trying. No offense to any of the other coaches out there who don't hit the gym as much, who may be a little bit more advanced in age and therefore bodies have succumb to gravity. But Brother Campbell, man, you can tell he's in there. He don't miss no leg days. He's in there. And I think that, the players seem to gravitate towards him because of the whole package, that he really inspires them to understand the why behind what they're doing every day at practice.
So it's funny because, you bring up football, because this morning I was listening to Get Up on ESPN, another show. Obviously, we're football fans here.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt.
But they were talking about Tom Brady. They were saying that, so like how Tom, like this year, has been kind of like football hasn't been his priority. So they just took a loss now against the Pittsburgh, which was unexpected. And, they weren't even thinking that was going to be a thing. But what they were saying was that what you were talking about, the coach is like he hasn't been to the meetings. Like Saturday's meeting, he wasn't there for that meeting. He was actually at the wedding for Kraft, owner of New England.
The Patriots?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was funny. They were like, there's nothing, like, they didn't lose because of Tom.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like he had an awful day, but what they were saying is that, what does that show the team?
100%.
That now they're not the priority anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, look at that. How
I think it goes back to leaders are conscious of the communication that they're making, even when they're not speaking.
100%.
And I think, that would
we talk about servant leadership all the time.
Yeah.
And so, and I've learned from my personal journey, I've learned what it is to be a boss, and I've learned what it is to be a leader, because I've been both. I've been the boss where, like, I started my first business and I had no idea of how to run. I didn't take business class. For me, it was just marketing and advertising and so design. But I never spent time, or I never did any further work on learning what it takes to run a business. And I'm not, I would say I'm more of the masses that I am the not, right? So like, I think that a lot of people out there own businesses today or run businesses that really don't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
And you could be really bad at finances. I was bad at that too. So I had to learn that I had to get a good accountant. But my point here is that, like you were saying, a boss is very task oriented, and I wasn't seeing what was happening, and I wasn't feeding my people. I wasn't really building them up to be better or giving them the space to be better. Like a lot of the work that we do now is culture oriented.
Yeah,
and why
absolutely.
has it become that? Because again, it's important to me. I understand it's important because I've been there. I understand that if I would have had a better culture, or if I would have instilled something better, it would have changed a lot of things. But we all go through our journeys to learn.
And you live and you learn. And I think that, learning, interestingly enough, one of the best learning opportunities I had in terms of leadership was coaching youth sports. There's something to be said about trying to get a group of 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds to understand a concept and understand the why behind why we do certain things, and, importance of, especially trying to get them to understand, the benefits of discipline. And it was interesting because what the youth sports taught me was sometimes we overthink when we're dealing with adults. And, they taught me just to slow down and listen.
Good point.
Slow down and listen, so that I knew there was, and the differing personalities of kids, I think, was very important, that we don't see it as dramatically with adults in the workplace necessarily, but the kids were more dramatic, which made me more conscious of it. Like there were certain kids that you knew if you yelled, they would shut down, cry, maybe, be just totally despondent for the rest of practice or rest of the game. But there are other kids who thrived on that, I would say, passionate feedback, and would use it as fuel. And being able to dissect very early who were those kids and which bucket they fell into kind of made me understand that adults were the same. They just weren't as obvious about their differences.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah. So
you're right. Yeah, they don't throw. They're not going to throw a tantrum, or they're not going to. Because at the end of the day, they're trying to keep their job.
Correct.
But to your point, they disappear from the company and they check out.
They check out, and the person that's supposed to be working on a project but keeps delaying sending it to you, that may indicate they're like that kid who may not be as confident in a skill, and therefore always goes to the back of the line when you're doing a drill.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so there were like similarities in terms of, I think, mindsets and different that you know, you learn like to, oh wow, so I'm seeing this. Let me empower that person, not chastise that person. You know, you can yell at the kid, oh, stop going to the back of the line. You need to do this hitting drill. Or you can say, hey, I notice you keep going back to the end of the line. Tell me why.
So, like, yeah, it's huge. So, like, reflectively, if you think back of, you know, from the client work that we've done, because this is another arena that we stumble upon. It's like that we're working with these companies and we realize, dang, leadership is jacked up.
And you know, a lot of times, I don't know. I hope you agree with me. They're not even. I hope you agree.
Right. I hope so too.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's not even intentional. I think that for many of the leaders, they're so caught up in the work that they're not really focused on the people who are executing and the culture that's being cultivated while everything is going on.
That's another good point. So I've been guilty of that too. So you're so buried in the tactical or the day-to-day stuff that you forget the leadership role.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with understanding what is a leader. I think this is a great question for a lot of folks. That leader doesn't mean you stand in the front. Leader means you stand in the back.
Yeah.
And you make sure that you're guiding the folks forward.
Yeah.
That was another kind of perspective that I had to understand, that, you know, it wasn't that you're in the front taking all the bullets, but necessarily that you're carving out that path and helping folks to move through it. And not only that, but understanding that you don't need to have all the answers. That was another thing that I used to think
that's a very good point.
I had to make all the calls. It doesn't work like that.
And you're going to fail if you think that you can.
Right.
And I think if you go into leadership with a certain humility, you, by virtue of that humility, surround yourself with good people, smart people, people who can move the company and yourself forward. Because your humility says, I need to surround myself with good people and smart people because I don't know everything.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's so crucial. I mean, I definitely know, and you know, now in this part of I guess in the season that I'm in my career, is that you get to really sit back and listen, and really kind of, I don't know if it's not just gratitude, but I think it's, you know, the folks that you're surrounded with, that you get to work as a collective, and that was, I think, as a young art director, you know, creative director, like you struggle with that because you're so lost in kind of creating ideas all the time that you forget that there's so much more that goes into what you're doing than that. Yeah. And by that I mean just like let's talk about just like maybe whether it's, you know, building a campaign, right? You know, you forget that it's just not, there's people involved.
Yeah.
And the people, yeah. So like, you know, like I'm the type of person that I'm very, you know, driven and I focus, like I zero in on what I want to do, and so that was something that I had to kind of step back and say, you know what, Roly, you gotta take it easy, man. Oh, and I mean, I did see a therapist for that, but
no, I think
where I had to, like, you know, I had to seek professional help, but I needed to. That's part of it too.
It is. Listen,
that's like training for the mind.
As part of that humility I was talking about, leaders need to allow themselves to grow.
Right.
And you know, if you come into any position thinking that you are an optimized leader without anything else to learn, you're already failing, because there's a certain level of, another level of humility, which is these people around me can teach me.
Yes.
And I think that when people feel valued in terms of that they bring something to you as the leader, they're even more empowered to give their 100%. Because you're reinforcing their value. Mm-hmm. I have zero problem. I never had any problem going up to someone in a particular department when I was in higher ed administration. And my financial aid person knew more than me about financial aid. And so...
Expectedly.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah. And it felt good. And I could watch when I would go to them and say, hey, can you do me a favor? tell me a little bit about X, Y, and Z. I'm not really understanding that. Can you tell me how that affects our students? Mm-hmm. And I watched how they would take such pride in being able to explain something to me. And at the same time, I felt more empowered because, man, that was great. Now, I know I have the right person in this role because they were able to explain it to me, so they should surely be able to explain all the options to a student. So it also reinforced that was the right person in that role.
That's great. Yeah. Well, so I'm going to kick it up 3 years up on the same question. So, because I know it's something that's affecting a lot of folks. So we're talking about what it takes to be a great leader. So what does it take to be a great leader in today's climate and social climate, right? So because you and I are in it, and so how do you navigate in today's society with so many social dilemmas that we have?
Yeah.
Whether it's race, whether it's like, our own equality as people, as humans, like, how is that any different? Is it different? Does it change the meaning? Does it not? For me, it doesn't. So
that's interesting. That's a really interesting question.
So, and this is kind of what my point that I want to make, and then I'll let you go. But so my point is, so I'm a big believer in that. You're not a business person, part time, and you're not a family guy part time. You're one individual person. We're not, and our minds are not broken, fragmented into being separate people.
Right.
So one of the best mirrors that I tell a lot of folks and people that I speak to, especially like young entrepreneurs, is that you need to look at your daily life as who you are at the home, whether you're married or you're not, who you are with your friends, and that is reflectively who you are going to show up as a leader.
I totally agree. And
so, like, it's important, I think, especially me, I have two boys, a 15 and 11-year-old, that I can't be a powerhouse, of a business person, then come home and I'm the weakest, role model for my boys and a husband.
Yeah.
So I've made it a thing where I need to be consistently working on myself all day. It's not just, it's not just about, I need to be strong at home, strong at work, strong as a friend. I gotta show up. So I can't go full throttle on business and then, be gassed. Be gassed for everything else.
That's fair.
And I think in today's society, a big word is to be aware. I think that we need to be aware of who we are, how we're showing up, and what we're saying.
And I think, you have to be aware, and then you have to be committed to who you are and your values. I mean, your values as a leader, to your point, typically aren't going to or shouldn't be different than your values as a father, values as a husband, values as a church member. That's who you are. And I think going back to your question about navigating kind of the climate that we live in, I think the values has to be your guide, in terms of doing that. And being aware that people are bringing things into the workplace that, you have to be more careful about dealing with than you ever did before. You have to make a serious decision about your public face as a leader and the organization you're running. Where do we stand on some of these issues? And it's tricky. You don't want to turn all of your messaging and all of your presence into a political statement because that can be detrimental. But at the same time, there's certain core values that you've got to be willing to stick up for if you're going to be authentic. And, even on our website, there's this data out there that shows that consumers respect organizations, which are driven by leaders, who communicate certain values and are committed to those certain values. Value-driven organizations are deemed and seen as being more credible. So, to that overall point, it's basing, your value system and, making sure that you're consistent with that, I think, is part of navigating what's going on today.
So did you think that when you were like early 20s that you'd be having this conversation?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know what? It's so funny. Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah. I mean, that opens the question. And we had Andrew Zulo here one time talking about leadership development. That's why, and his programs at an early age now that he had talked about, I think are crucial, because we wouldn't have had that conversation in our 20s because no one was teaching us how to be leaders in our 20s.
No.
I was taught to go get a job.
Right. Go out there and grind it.
That's it. Went to college, go get a job now. That was the whole goal.
And that's the thing. Like, you know, I think when you talk about leaders, people think that it's just some, you know, person that runs a company. That's not the leader that we're talking about. We're talking about leadership in whatever you stand right now. Like you can lead whatever, whether it's your junior high football league. So
100%.
if you're in junior high, you're a student, you know, this also applies. But you know, again, it's, you know, whether you're a manager or whether you're just an employee or whatever the case, you're not just that. You are more than that. And it's something that we try to also educate our clients about, that, you know, you're you know, we don't like even calling them employees.
It's your team. It's your
team. It's I don't want to say family, because sometimes that throws people off, but I think that you know, brand influencers and partners and team members, brand ambassadors are all more, I guess,
I think more impactful.
Yes.
And, ways to look at the people who deliver your brand promise. You know, and we don't look typically sometimes at our teams as that. We look at them as the people who execute work. And once again, now we're going back to being a boss. Yeah. Whereas if they're the person who drive your why, these are the people that elevate our purpose. These are the people that drive my brand promise. And that becomes the way you look at them. Your leadership style will change and evolve.
So, you know, if you learned anything today, it's about don't be a boss.
Yeah.
So we encourage you to stop being a boss.
There's a lot of bosses out there, but not enough leaders.
Amen to that. So any final thoughts?
No, man, I think this was good. I think as election time is coming up in November,
great point.
We need to elect leaders and not bosses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very important, I think.
All right, guys. Well, thank you. We appreciate you joining. Catch the next show. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.